The miracle doctor won't be a kept man, my heart belongs ashore. Chapter 3:11. Eager for me to sleep with you. These words echoed in Snow's ears for a long time, like a thunder striking her heart. What the fuck is that bastard talking about? What did he mean by that? She was a beautiful young woman in her prime, who had always stayed away from men. Why would she wish for such a thing? She hated Kiran, her second-hand husband. Snow took a deep breath and suppressed her anger, but she could feel that something was off. Kiran had been patient with her but could not hold it back anymore. So he said weakly, "Honey, you should go to the bathroom now." "I don't care." Snow felt something off with her body halfway through speaking, so she looked down. Her face and neck turned red. She immediately hopped off the bed and ran to the bathroom. Kiran reluctantly removed the blood-stained bedsheets and sighed at the bitter reality that all women had to go through monthly. After cleaning up, Kiran went to the kitchen and made some hot chocolate for Snow. 10 minutes later, Snow came out, blushing. She looked much weaker than usual. However, she was comforted by the sight of hot chocolate on the table. She looked at Kiran gratefully and saw the teasing smile on his face. "Don't laugh." Snow already knew that she had made a huge mistake. Nothing happened between them. Kiran suddenly looked stern and asked Snow seriously, "Honey, there's something I don't understand." "What is it?" Snow said haughtily while she drank her hot chocolate like she owned the place. Kiran patted the back of his head embarrassedly. Snow noticed that Kiran looked afraid of her, so she looked even more arrogant. "Are you going to tell me or not? Do you want me to say it?" Kiran seemed hesitant. Snow glanced sideways and then at Kiran while her lips were pressed against the cup. Kiran mustered up the courage and asked Snow, "Honey, how do a man and a woman make a baby?" Kiran tried to hold back his laughter and said, "I'm from the countryside, so I don't have any experience." Cough, cough. Snow spit out her drink and coughed violently. "You told me to say it," Kiran said while running away. "You bastard." Snow's face was red as she cursed while stamping her feet. However, Kiran had already run outside. Snow clenched her fists as if she was about to kill someone. Wait a minute, that could not be right. After regaining her senses, Snow was shocked. Kiran was a doctor. How could he not know how one conceives a child? He must know. Suddenly, a smile appeared on her face. It was a smile of joy. Kiran was trying to tell her that he had never slept with a woman before. She could not help but feel embarrassed about getting jealous this morning. "Jerk, I'll forgive you this time," Snow muttered toward the door. "Creak, you forgive me?" Kiran said, walking in with breakfast. "You," Snow blushed. "Time for breakfast," Kiran said, placing breakfast in front of Snow. Snow was stunned. "You just went out a second ago. How did you get all this? This doesn't look like takeout." Kiran pointed toward the door and said, "Margaret and Rain live next door, so we don't have to worry about our meals every day now." Snow was secretly glad to hear that but acted arrogant on purpose. "I'm not eating." Kiran raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "Are you not eating the entire day?" Snow could not sense the sarcasm in his voice, so she said, "Yes, I'm not eating for the entire day." "Impressive," Kiran said, suppressing a smile. Snow was baffled. How could she starve for a day? Jerk. Bam, bam, bam. Weak punches landed on Kiran like raindrops. Kiran grabbed Snow's hand and smiled with his eyes. "Feed me," Snow said flirtatiously. "Okay," Kiran said excitedly. There was a joyful smile on Snow's face. Beep, beep. Then Kiran's phone rang. Kiran saw that Onyx was calling and answered immediately. "What's wrong?" "Mr. Kiran, some people from a wedding company came to the company and set up a proposal at the entrance. It's huge and very grand, but I don't know who's proposing," Onyx said obscurely, without mentioning that the proposal was for Snow. Kiran understood. "Don't move or do anything. I'll go over right now." "Yes, sir." Onyx hung up. Kiran smirked devilishly at the darkened screen. Snow, who was snuggled in Kiran's arms, heard their conversation. She stared at Kiran with eyes full of shock and disbelief. "Who's proposing? Who do you think will propose to you?" Kiran smiled. "Which idiot in Bayville wouldn't know that I'm married?" Snow's pretty face turned red as she glared at Kiran. In other words, she was saying that no one in Bayville would dare offend Kiran. "Aren't you happy you have admirers?" Kiran teased. "That's because I'm so charming. You better be honest and nice to me, or else I'll divorce you and marry someone else." Snow looked at him proudly. Kiran stroked his chin and said, "There's something I should do." "What is it?" Snow thought that he was talking about the proposal, so she asked curiously, I should impregnate you with my child. Then, I'll have someone raise my child. And Kiran shouted. Snow's fair hands pinched the skin on Kiran's underarms. She looked like she was about to eat him alive. You bastard! How dare you say that? Snow asked angrily. And no, I won't anymore. Kiran faked his suffering. That's more like it. Otherwise, I would have gone out to buy a whip today. Snow snorted. Kiran smirked. He did not mind. He patted Snow's buttocks and said, Go get dressed. Let's go see what's going on. Get your hands off me. Snow jumped onto the ground and glared at Kiran fiercely. Does it hurt? Do you need me to massage it for you? Kiran said seriously. Snow had no words. Ha ha ha. Kiran laughed. I'll wait for you downstairs. He walked out right after that. Snow stamped her feet angrily. The thought of Kiran's massage made her face turn red. Pervert. She turned around and got dressed. She was curious about the proposal too. When Kiran got downstairs, he called Marshall. It only rang once before he picked up. How are you, Mr. Kiran? Marshall said nervously. Not good. Kiran's tone sent chills down his spine. Chapter 3:12. Marshall felt like his body was frozen in ice. Seeing the proposal set up in front of him made him even more nervous. But he gritted his teeth and said, Mr. Kiran, there's nothing I can do. Snow's father, Michael, had agreed to marry his daughter to Mr. Ludwig, so Mr. Ludwig asked me to prepare this. Michael, Kiran asked. Yes. Michael was left in Swallow Bay and was about to be blown up with us, but he was saved by Mr. Ludwig's people yesterday, Marshall said while wiping off the cold sweat on his forehead. Kiran instantly thought of the fake Michael, and he sneered. That guy must have taken his role seriously. Marshall got nervous when Kiran remained silent, so he asked, Mr. Kiran, what do you want me to do? Nothing, just go ahead, Kiran said and hung up. After a moment of contemplation, he dialed Harold's number. Kiran, did you save Michael yesterday? Harold asked quickly after the call went through. He knew Kiran had gone to save Michael yesterday, so he had been waiting for updates. He could not sleep at all last night, but he also could not bring himself to ask. I rescued him. He's back at Xander Corporation, so you can bring Snow's mother over there with you, said Kiran. You saved him? That's wonderful. Harold wiped away his tears and laughed, not realizing the second meaning behind Kiran's words. Don't get too worked up, Mr. Xander. The family will be reunited forever now, Kiran said sincerely as he started getting emotional. Yes, of course. The family will finally be together. Ha ha, Harold laughed, thinking about the 15 years of separation between him and his son. Kiran hung up and waited for Snow to come down. He knew it would be an eventful day, seeing as Hans was so impatient to meet his demise. Wait, no, he was going to become a eunuch. If he turned Hans into a eunuch, Power Hub Investment Group would collapse, and they would not have any power to attack him. That would be perfect. Kiran could not wait to see that happen. Nimbus Hollows could wait. Snow was about to go downstairs after changing when she received a call from her mother. She immediately answered, Mom. Shannon was crying as she scolded. Why didn't you tell me your father had been rescued? I've been worried sick the entire night. Snow froze when she heard that. She fell asleep right after Kiran picked her up, and she was so distracted by the misunderstanding this morning that she forgot to ask too. Snow said embarrassedly, Kiran didn't tell me, so I didn't know either. That bastard. I'm going to Xander Corporation to see your father right now, Shannon said and hung up. When Snow heard that her father was in Xander Corporation, she could not wait to go there, so she immediately put on her shoes and went downstairs. When she got downstairs, Kiran was in the car. He seemed relaxed. Her heart was full at the thought of Kiran risking his life to save her father. When she got into the car, she leaned toward Kiran and kissed his cheek. Kiran froze. He did not expect Snow to be so bold. A couple just so happened to walk past them. When the woman saw the Ferrari and how well dressed Kiran and Snow were, she could not help but feel jealous. She said, It must be nice to find a rich man. Snow? And Kiran froze. Snow's face darkened. Did she think that Kiran was her sugar daddy? Did she look like someone that needed to be taken care of? Was she a gold digger? Kiran held back his laughter and raised his voice on purpose. Honey, you haven't given my $10,000 allowance this month. The woman in front of them staggered. Was she the sugar mommy? Not only was she paying him, but she was the one making the first move. Was she insane? The man was full of envy. Finding a rich and beautiful woman who could treat a man so well was rare. The more he looked at Snow, the more he realized how ugly his partner was. He ignored the woman beside him and asked Kiran smilingly, "Sir, which club did you go to find a rich woman like her?" Snow had just gotten into the car when she heard that. She froze. Did he just say she was a sugar mommy who picked Kiran up in the club? "I found her on the streets." Kiran stepped on the accelerator and drove off. The couple did not even have the chance to respond. Snow was confused. "What do you mean?" Kiran happened to slow down for a turn, passing by a lamppost, so he pointed and said, "Look." Snow glanced over and saw the words "prostitutes wanted." "I'm going to kill you." Snow went mad and grabbed Kiran. Kiran smiled devilishly and tapped Snow's underarm. Suddenly, she could not move or speak. Kiran whistled all the way to Xander Corporation. He wanted to stop Snow from asking about Michael. It would ruin the fun. Through the rearview mirror, he saw the man dumping the woman. He ran to look at the sign, angrily stamped his feet after realizing that Kiran had tricked him. In the next second, the couple started tackling each other, drawing the attention of other passers-by. Kiran shrugged and looked at Snow in the passenger seat. He joked, "City girls are all beasts." Snow felt like her lungs were about to burst. Her mind was filled with curses. The word bastard kept appearing in her mind and lingering in her heart. At the entrance of Xander Corporation, the wedding company had set up a huge screen displaying pictures of college life. Every now and then, there would be pictures of Hans and Snow. However, the two of them did not interact much in those pictures. They were mostly pictures of them attending classes, studying, or participating in class activities. There was a red carpet lined with roses on each side. It was uncountable. It just looked like a red ocean. On the table in the middle of the red carpet was a sparkling 24-karat diamond ring. It was dazzling and beautifully crafted. The setup had garnered quite a lot of attention as people began taking photos and posting them on social media. However, the entrance of Xander Corporation was tightly shut. It was quiet inside, as if they did not know what was happening out there. Hans sat in the car on the side of the road. He was in a white suit with his hair slicked back, and he was oozing with confidence. He looked like Prince Charming. The fake Michael sat beside him in a suit and leather shoes, looking charming too. He looked at the scene before him and could not help but admire Hans' generosity. He was envious of his wealth. If Michael was dead, and he replaced him, would he live a life of luxury clothes, gourmet food, and beautiful women? The thought of Shannon alone made him crazy. Vroom vroom. Suddenly, the sound of a car engine was heard. Kiran had arrived. Chapter 3:13. Snow's jaw dropped when she saw the scene before her. This was no small feat. However, she was repulsed when Hans's picture appeared on the screen. She was enraged. "Hans loves you so much." Kiran teased and tapped Snow's body. Snow regained the freedom to move and angrily said, "That shows how charming I am." "Of course. Why else would I not find Yvonne or Serena attractive?" Kiran said truthfully. Snow was annoyed that he compared her to them. She pouted and said, "What do you mean by that? Are you saying you would fall for them if it weren't for me? You're the only one in my heart." Kiran smiled. "Go away. You're disgusting." Despite saying that, Snow's eyes betrayed feelings of joy. Every woman wished to be treated like a princess. She was even happier to be treated like a princess by a man like Kiran. "Are you chasing me away after you found someone new?" Kiran said bitterly. "You." Snow was so angry she was speechless. "What an idiot. I know my wife only loves me." Kiran suddenly laughed. Snow was irritated by Kiran's constant teasing, so she said on purpose, "You're mistaken. I'll go accept Hans's proposal later. If he wants second-hand goods, there's nothing I can do about it." Kiran suppressed a smile. "Kiran, believe it or not, but I'm going to stab you to death tonight." Snow raised her voice in anger. "Stab me?" Kiran's eyes lit up as he asked. Snow could sense his sarcasm. "You." She lifted her hands to hit him. Kiran had parked the car and jumped out, shouting, "Husband murderer." As soon as he said that, everyone around him was stunned. When Marshall heard Kiran's voice, he was so frightened that he almost dropped the flowers in his hand. Hans heard him from inside the car, so he looked over. He did not recognize Kiran as he was disguised as a waiter on the cruise ship, so he looked completely different. However, he noticed Snow immediately. Her outstanding beauty and grace were still the same as ever. Her hair was flowing, and her almond-shaped eyes were twinkling. He was captivated by her feminine charm. Even the hint of frustration on her face made her look mesmerizing. She was the woman he had dreamt of countless times. She was the woman he thought about while he was with other women. She was the woman he still could not let go of. However, the sight of her flirting with Kiran filled him with anger. Hans tried his best to control his anger. He looked at the fake Michael and said, "Mr. Xander, that's Snow." The fake Michael could not recognize Snow, but fortunately, he could say he had not seen her in years as an excuse. When he saw her, he was amazed by her beauty. He finally understood why Hans was so eager to propose. The thought of him giving Snow away to Hans, and then having Shannon all to himself was perfect. He did not notice Hans's anger, but happily said, "You two are a match made in heaven." Hans's anger dissipated when he heard him say that, and he thought that it was time to prove himself. "Wait a moment, Mr. Xander. You can come down later. I'll go give Snow a surprise." The fake Snow nodded as he contemplated how he should act later. Unaware of the other's thoughts, Hans had already opened the door and exited the car before running to Snow. Kiran had already walked onto the red carpet with his hands behind his back. He frowned at the bright red roses beside him and asked Marshall and the others, "What are you doing?" How was Marshall going to explain? He was already terrified during the phone call. Now that Kiran was here, he was worried for his life. The people from the wedding company did not know Kiran. They got angry when they saw him stepping on the spotless red carpet and ruining their hard work. "Hey, who said you could step on the red carpet? Get off." Chapter 3:14. Why are you still stepping forward? Stop. Are you not stopping? Get the fuck out of here. Everyone shouted, but Kiran continued calmly as if he did not hear them. Their eyes were filled with fury. Some even rushed forward to knock Kiran down. Kiran continued walking forward, looking at the big screen. Just then, Hans was professing his love to Snow on the big screen. "Snow, I haven't seen you in 2 years. I hope that you're doing well. There hasn't been a moment in the last 2 years where I didn't miss you or didn't want to be with you. I miss the days we were in college together. Today, I finally come to shout my love to you. I love." Boom. Before Hans could say the last word, Kiran waved his hand at the big screen. There was a cracking sound, and the audio stopped abruptly. Crash. The entire screen shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. The people who rushed forward were so frightened that they stopped in their tracks. Marshall was trembling. He dared not say a word. Hans was walking over to Snow when his message was playing. He stood there calmly, looking at Snow and hoping she would be moved. He even fantasized that Snow would be so touched that she would throw herself into his arms. In the end, his confession came to a sudden halt. The highlight of the video was ruined. He was angered and in disbelief. Kiran ignored Hans's reaction and walked to the table, where the diamond ring was placed. He gazed at the table and slammed. He slammed the table, and the glass shattered. There were sounds of more things breaking, and the ring was exposed. Kiran picked up the diamond ring and held it directly under the sun. Under the sun, the diamond ring shone so brilliantly it was almost blinding. "This is garbage." After Kiran said that, he gently squished it and turned it into fine dust, letting it float away into the wind. Everyone was shocked. It was a diamond ring with a real diamond. It was the hardest substance on earth. Kiran so effortlessly crushed a solid diamond ring. Was he even human? He was a god. Hans had practiced martial arts. He thought he was skilled, but he was shocked after seeing what Kiran did. It also made him angrier. His meticulously planned proposal was ruined. He ran over to Kiran and shouted, "Hey, who the hell do you think you are?" He exuded a cold and murderous aura. Kiran did not even bat an eye. Instead, he kicked the flowers in front of him. The roses seemed to have eyes as they flew toward Hans. Hans panicked and tried to dodge, but he was half a second too late. With a piercing sound, the roses landed on his face. The sharp thorns were like countless needles piercing his face. Ugh. Hans instantly felt the pain, causing him to scream in agony. Everyone was terrified. Kiran's attacks were merciless, even though Hans was from an affluent family. Even Snow was frightened. Was Kiran out of his mind? He injured Hans from the start. Kiran was already giving Marshall a death stare. Marshall felt like prey being targeted by a ferocious beast, so he retreated while trembling in fear. "Who is this proposal for?" Kiran asked in a cold tone. Marshall was at a loss. He did not know what to say. Hans's pain had subsided. When he saw Snow, he pretended to stay calm and said loudly, "Snow, I came here to propose to you, but that bastard ruined it." All Kiran did was smile at him. Chapter 3:15. Hans and Kiran exchanged angry stares. He regretted coming here without bodyguards. He did not bring any. He thought he was just going to make a romantic proposal. Most importantly, he saved Michael, and Michael agreed to let Snow marry him. He thought there was no way Snow would refuse and no one would stop it. He did not expect Kiran to be so overbearing and not give him a chance at all. Marshal, call backup. Hans glared at Kiran sharply and resentfully. He said, "Who do you think you are? How dare you come here and cause trouble?" He turned to look at Snow and smiled. But his smile looked horrifying after his face got pricked by thorns. Blood was dripping all over his face, and he looked like a demon from hell. Snow was scared of him, so she subconsciously moved closer to Kiran. The smile on Hans's face disappeared, and he looked at Snow angrily. "Who is this man?" Kiran sneered inwardly. What an idiot. He discovered that Snow had a husband on the cruise ship, yet he did not investigate him. Hans was so arrogant that he thought he was better than everyone else. He raised an eyebrow and sneered at Hans. "Who are you?" Hans straightened his posture and said proudly, "I'm Snow's college classmate, Hans Ludwig." "Oh?" Kiran nodded. He pretended to look surprised and pointed around him, asking, "Then, what are you doing here?" "I came to propose," Hans said to Kiran. When he was reminded of who he was, he regained his confidence. "Propose?" Kiran burst out laughing. "Yes, propose." Hans looked at Kiran even more proudly. He even thought to himself that Kiran had lost his mind. "Do you have any sisters?" Kiran looked at Hans and asked. Hans was stunned. He instinctively answered, "I have 2 older sisters. One is married, one isn't." "Ask the married one to come over," Kiran said suddenly. "Why?" Hans was confused. "To have her be my woman," Kiran said with a smile. "What did you say?" Hans realized that he was being fooled. He took a few steps forward and growled, "I'm saying you're a stupid motherfucker." Kiran went up and slapped him twice. Ugh. Hans covered his face and looked at Kiran. He was so angry that he was going mad. He attacked him again, but even more frustrating was that he had nowhere to hide. "When your sister is married, others can't pursue her, but when my wife is married, you can. What kind of logic is that?" The more Kiran talked, the angrier he became. He lifted his leg and kicked him. Ugh. Hans was kicked in the stomach. He screamed and plopped onto the ground. Snow and everyone watching were shocked. Only Onyx and the others were excitedly watching from the inside. "That is Mr. Kiran, all right." He took matters into his own hands when it came to Snow. He is a true man, who said a man had to experience setbacks before making a comeback. Men had to protect their women. That was true love. Hans calmed down after getting beaten up. He stared at Kiran annoyedly and said, "Are you Snow's alleged husband?" "Remove the word alleged," Kiran sneered. He raised his voice and emphasized, "I'm Snow's husband, Kiran." His piercing eyes fell upon Hans like sharp blades as soon as he said that. Although Hans could feel the chill down his spine, he stood up energetically and said, "Tui, who the fuck are you? Why would Snow want to marry you?" "Because I can hug her like this." Kiran held Snow in his arms. Hans's face was fierce, and he had a bloodthirsty gaze in his eyes. He looked at Snow and said, "Snow, I know you're in a fake marriage with this guy. You can't possibly love this man, right?" Snow was already calm at that point. Her heart was full after being pampered by Kiran. Although Kiran was like a mad wolf, he did it to protect her. He was the man she loved. He did not even sleep with her when he could have. He treated her like a queen. Hans was just a douche who wanted to get into bed with her. Smooch. Snow kissed Kiran on the cheek and said, "Honey, honey." A kiss. Hans was speechless. His heart was in turmoil. He was furious, but his men had arrived just in time. Although they were not with him, they were nearby. He was the eldest son of the Ludwig family after all. After getting kidnapped, his family gave orders to protect him at all costs. Therefore, after receiving Marshall's call, they rushed over immediately. "Kill him!" Hans roared angrily at his men. Whoosh! One of his men stepped forward. He was a tall, muscular man in his 30s. His entire body was lean muscle, and his expression was menacing. That man looked way more intimidating than the man in Wolfgate, both in strength and appearance. As he stepped forward, he exuded a powerful aura and said domineeringly, "Kid, you better kneel before Mr. Ludwig and beg for mercy." "Fuck you." Kiran let go of Snow and spoke. The man did not even have time to react, let alone dodge. Crack. The crisp sound of bones cracking sounded as the man's knees were broken. He seemed a lot shorter than before and fell to the ground. Thud. There was a dull sound like a ball of meat falling onto the ground. The man covered his knees with his hands and rolled on the floor, screaming. Gasp. Everyone had goosebumps. Hans's other men put away their fierce gaze and looked at Kiran warily. Kiran ignored everyone's reaction and looked at Hans's men. Come at me. You either kneel and get your legs broken by me, or you break Hans's legs. Boom. Kiran's words sounded like thunder. Everyone was petrified. There were several emotions in Hans's face at once. Finally, he said angrily, kill him together. Hans's men were furious. You're insane. Go to hell. How about I break your legs? Chapter 3:16. Here, call your married sister, Kiran said seriously. What are you doing? Hans asked hurriedly. I want to make her mine. Kiran joked. You. Hans almost burst into flames. Snow thought that she had heard wrongly. She looked at him in surprise. Was Kiran insane? The others were confused too. Kiran had such a beautiful wife next to him, yet he still wanted Hans's sister. Not to mention, he wanted the married one. What a pervert. Is that a no? Kiran looked at Hans coldly. Without waiting for an answer, he went up to slap him again. Do you want me to repeat myself? Ugh. Hans staggered and screamed. He was livid. HMPH. You're shameless. Suddenly, a man's frigid voice sounded. Kiran looked over and saw that it was Michael. Kiran laughed inwardly. It was the fake Michael in disguise. Snow did not know he was the fake Michael. When she saw him, she thought that he was the father she had cried over countless times while looking at his photo. Her heart ached, and her tears fell like rain. She shouted anxiously, Dad. She was about to run to the fake Michael when Kiran reached out to pull her hand. Let go. That's my dad. Snow shouted, trying to break free from Kiran's hand. The fake Michael saw how beautiful and voluptuous Snow was. If she ran into his arms, he could not only hug her but also caress her face. As her dad, no one would suspect him of hugging and touching her like that. His dream was about to become a reality, but Kiran ruined it. He was frustrated, but he still stayed in character. He shouted kindly, Snow, are you really Snow? You're so big now. Dad, it's me. Snow could feel her father's concern and was even more eager to break free from Kiran's arms. However, Kiran held Snow in his arms and said, You're not allowed to go. You're sick. Snow yelled angrily. Let go of my daughter. The fake Michael shouted, pretending to be angry. She's my wife. I have the final say. Kiran responded arrogantly. She's my daughter. I didn't agree to let her marry you, so your marriage doesn't count. The fake Michael said angrily. You're just a piece of shit. Kiran got angry after seeing the fake Michael pretending to be the real one. Snow was shocked and furious to hear Kiran say that. Kiran, that's my dad. How could you talk to him like that? Feigning righteousness, the fake Michael said angrily. I will make you get a divorce immediately. I will never let my daughter marry a bastard like you. He pointed at Hans and said to Snow, if Hans hadn't saved me, I would have died. You should divorce him and marry Hans. Hans seemed to have forgotten the pain after hearing that. He looked at Snow and said affectionately, Snow, I organized the cruise party to save your father. I even risked my life to go to Swallow Bay to save him. When I came back, I was almost killed by Regulus. The fake Michael said sadly, if it weren't for Hans, I would have been blown up on Swallow Bay and be fed to the fish. I wouldn't be here to see you again. What did you say? Snow felt like she was struck by lightning. She immediately turned to Kiran and said, You didn't save my father. Kiran was amused, especially by the fake Michael and Hans's acting. The former was so into his character, while the latter said that he risked his life to save Michael. Speak. Snow thought that Kiran was guilty, which angered her even more. Kiran raised his eyebrows and said, You're right. I didn't save that man. Chapter 3:17. What? Snow mumbled in shock. Her body felt like it had been struck by lightning again, and her face was full of disappointment. Kiran nodded. I didn't save him. Hans rescued him. Snow felt her vision go dark, and she almost collapsed. She tried to break free from Kiran's hands but could not. She got so angry that she shouted, You liar. Let me go. Instead of letting her go, he held her even tighter. Let go of me, or else I'll go kill myself. She was reminded of how she hugged and kissed him when he came back. She was even ready to give herself to him to thank him for saving her father. but it turned out that he did not. She was devastated and heartbroken. Kiran did not care. He looked at the fake Michael and said, "Why should I save you? It's none of my business if you die or not." Snow was speechless. Her eyes were brimming with tears of disappointment. How could Kiran not care about her father's life? She was disappointed to see how heartless he was. She was so overwhelmed that she wished that she could hit him to death. "You animal, the Xander family has done so much for you, yet you're so ungrateful," Shannon's enraged voice echoed. Snow turned around and saw that her mother and grandfather had arrived. Both of them looked at the fake Michael with teary eyes. Snow was overwhelmed with grief and anger. She looked at Kiran and cried, "Kiran, I want to divorce you." The fake Michael was overjoyed. "You must divorce him. You have to marry someone like Mr. Ludwig." He turned to look at Shannon and said, "Shannon, I'm back." After saying that, he ran toward Shannon to hug her. Shannon's mature, beautiful features and slim figure made him think that even if he could be with her once in his lifetime, that would be enough. However, Kiran let go of Snow and quickly grabbed the fake Michael's clothes. He pulled him back and threw him onto the ground. "Ow!" The fake Michael fell onto the ground and screamed. "You animal! How dare you do that to your father-in-law?" Shannon roared angrily at Kiran and ran to help Michael up. Kiran reached out to stop Shannon. "You bastard! I'm your mother-in-law. How dare you stop me?" Shannon already hated Kiran to death. She deliberately said these things to shed a bad light on him and make Snow divorce him. Kiran ignored her. He held both Snow and Shannon while looking at Harold. Harold, who had been silent the entire time, was also feeling emotional, but he stared at the fake Michael without saying a word. The fake Michael did not know Harold at all. He only had eyes for Shannon. He wanted her, and he wanted to take over the real Michael's place. "He's not Michael," Harold said to Shannon and Snow. The two women immediately froze and stared at the fake Michael before them. The fake Michael also froze. He quickly looked at Harold and said, "I'm Michael." Harold shook his head and looked at Shannon. "Shannon, I know you've changed a lot since you came back, but your true nature has not changed. You're still filial and kind toward me, but what about the Michael in front of you?" Shannon trembled in shock. She and Michael had been trapped in Swallow Bay for 15 years. Although it was hard, they still loved each other. Most importantly, Michael was a filial son. He cared about Harold's health the most. Now that Harold was in front of him, it was fishy how he did not react at all. "Who are you?" Shannon asked warily. Snow had calmed down. Kiran let go of their hands and smirked at the fake Michael. Chapter 318. The fake Michael panicked, but he still insisted. "Shannon, I'm Michael, your husband, and Snow's father." "You're Michael." Shannon demanded proof and asked, "For the past 15 years, every year on my birthday, what did you cook for me?" The fake Michael froze. He did not know the answer. Besides, he was someone who could kill Michael with a single slap back then. Why would he care about that? However, he was unwilling to give in, so he said calmly, "Of course, I made you a birthday cake." "You're not Michael. You're an imposter," Shannon growled. The fake Michael panicked after being exposed, but he still defended himself. "I'm Michael. Have you forgotten what I look like?" Shannon shook her head. "You're not Michael?" Michael had never celebrated my birthday in the past 15 years. The fake Michael froze. It's not that he did not want to, but he couldn't. Every year, on my birthday, I would see a cut on his left arm. He did it because he blamed himself, Shannon said while tears streamed down her face. "What?" Snow whispered while tears fell like rain. Everyone there was moved by the act of true love. The fake Michael was at a loss. He did not know that. He could not find an excuse, even if he wanted to, because his arm had no scar. Shannon looked at Snow and said, "I love your father so much that I secretly left a mark on my arm too." After saying that, she showed the scars on her right arm. Under the sun, the red scars looked like they were crying about the cruelty and grief they had gone through those past years. Snow trembled violently. Her heart was breaking, but Kiran supported her to stop her from falling. Kiran was emotional too. This was what true love was, staying together through thick and thin. They did it for the York family. So Kiran was even more grateful toward the Xander family and Shannon. Harold's eyes were tearing up. "You and Michael did a good job." Shannon thought that Michael was dead, so she burst into tears. There was despair in her eyes as she turned to look at Harold. "Harold, I'm so sorry." Holding back tears, Harold said, "My dear child, What have you ever done to wrong me? Shannon said out of guilt. They forced me to come back and make Snow divorce Kiran to break up the Xander family. They said that they would let Michael go, but Shannon wiped her tears and said to Harold reluctantly, if Michael is dead, I don't want to live anymore. Take good care of Snow. Harold felt a stab in his chest. Shannon looked at Snow and Kiran, saying, you two should cherish and love each other. Then she glared at Kiran and said, if you ever betray my daughter, I'll haunt you as a ghost. Kiran's face was stern. He did not harbor any resentment toward Shannon. He only felt deep admiration for her. He hugged Snow while she sobbed. Wait, didn't you say you rescued Michael? In Kiran's arms, Snow bolted upright and asked expectantly, Kiran, where's my father? I'm here, Michael sobbed. When he saw from upstairs that Harold and his wife were there, he washed off his disguise and ran down. Michael, Harold and Shannon shouted at the same time when they saw him. Dad, Snow shouted. Michael had already run toward Harold and got onto his knees. Dad, I'm sorry for not being there for you. Michael. Harold held Michael in his arms and cried. He thought that he would never see him again. He did not expect him to show up. He caressed his son's head with both hands and said, you did good, very good. You are the pride of the Xander family. Dad. Michael cried like a long-lost child who had found his parents. Michael. Shannon was certain that it was him. So she ran over and hugged him while crying painfully. Snow ran over too. The entire family hugged each other and sobbed. The fake Michael had already turned into a sculpture. He did not expect the real Michael to be here. Hans confusedly looked left and right. He was filled with questions. He had no idea what was going on. Kiran was overwhelmed with emotions. The Xander family had been separated for 15 years, and it was all for the York family. The Xander family had a deep and unbreakable bond with the York family. He would never be able to repay them in his entire lifetime. He directed his anger toward the fake Michael and walked toward him. The fake Michael was filled with fear, and he backed away instinctively. Kiran's expression was icy cold. Regulus and your comrades are dead. What? The fake Michael was horrified. He felt like he was dreaming. The godlike Regulus and the many experts in Wolfgate could not be dead. I killed every single one of them. Kiran added casually. The fake Michael felt his soul leave his body. He retreated, wanting to escape. Wolfgate is extinct. Kiran said calmly before looking at Hans. You were kidnapped by Regulus and taken to Swallow Bay. You almost got bombed. Don't you hate Wolfgate? Hans was in a daze. He was about to explode with anger. The person he rescued was not Michael. The Xander family reunited and was crying out of joy. Although they did not know how, they were convinced Kiran had saved him. He thought about how Regulus had deceived him to go to Swallow Bay just to save Michael, and it had almost cost him his life. The humiliation and anger of being deceived was unbearable. Anger surged inside him as he asked the fake Michael, are you from Wolfgate? The fake Michael backed up, panic written all over his face. He's the last person alive from Wolfgate. If you want revenge, you should savor it, Kiran said to Hans. Hans stared at the fake Michael furiously. You bastard! How dare you lie to me? Whoosh! He swung his fist at him. The fake Michael needed to survive now that he had been exposed. He could not let himself die like this, so he attacked Hans too. The both of them started fighting, reciprocating punches with kicks. They were merciless. They fought to the death, wanting each other dead. The people in the wedding company were dumbstruck. How did they go from being good friends to being enemies? Harold and the others were shocked too. They stopped crying and looked at them fighting. I was rescued by Kiran from Swallow Bay 2 days ago, Michael said. Harold and the others looked at Kiran in shock. Kiran was calm. He smirked while walking toward the security room. Chapter 319. In the security room, Forrest was looking out the window. When he saw Kiran approaching, he backed away in fright, looking as pale as paper. On the other hand, Kiran looked normal. He looked at Forrest and pointed outside. Forrest, do you remember how Hans paid your woman $10 million to have a drink with him and paid her another $1 million to kneel before him? Forrest did not know what Kiran was thinking, but anger surged inside of him after being reminded of what happened. The frustration rose to his head and suffocated him. What are you doing? Forrest was still quite calm as he asked Kiran warily. I admire you. You're a smart person. Kiran suddenly smiled. Forrest guessed that Kiran wanted him to seek revenge on Hans, and he became even more nervous. Kiran pointed out the window and said, Hans wants to pursue my wife and break my leg. How do you think I should fight back? Forrest's face turned pale when he thought of Kiran asking the three families to kill the members of Wolfgate. He could already guess what Kiran was trying to do. I don't want to dirty my hands, so I'll give you a chance. If you kill him, you will live, Kiran said calmly, and left. Forrest stood there blankly for a few seconds. Kiran meant it. If he did not kill Hans, Kiran would kill him. He did not want to die. His survival instincts were triggered, so he ran out with detonation. Hans and the fake Michael were already lying on the ground, injured. Why aren't you two fighting? Keep going. Kiran walked up to them and smiled mockingly. The fake Michael thought if Kiran killed Regulus, his strength must be terrifying. Now that he was seriously injured, he dared not lash out at him, so he pretended to be mute. Hans was different. Although he was injured and his bodyguards defeated, he had a powerful family behind him. He could not lose to Kiran and humiliate himself. So he snorted, Kiran, today's business is not over. I won't let you get away with this. Kiran thought to himself, was he stupid? What makes him think that there would be a tomorrow? He squatted down and looked at the bloody Hans. He said, I know it's not over. Aren't you going to break my leg? I'm waiting. Are you going to do it now? Hans rolled his eyes in anger. He only said that because he thought his bodyguards would easily knock Kiran down. He realized it was his wishful thinking only after Kiran effortlessly defeated his bodyguards. However, he was the heir of the Ludwig family, so he was unwilling to give in. He sneered, Kiran, since you're waiting, I'll fulfill your wish. Kiran smiled and nodded. I'm looking forward to it too. I want to know what it feels like. Hans rolled his eyes, almost dying of anger. He wanted to get up and fulfill Kiran's wish, but he did not have the strength to get up. Hans, you fucker. Just then, Forrest ran over to Hans. When Hans saw Forrest, he was stunned. He asked panically, why are you here? Are you scared? Where did the confidence go when you snatched my woman away from me? Forrest was humiliated when Hans took his woman away from him in front of Bavel's upper class, so he kicked Hans twice. Hans grimaced in pain. Although he was angry, he did not say a word. It was not that he did not want to speak, but he was afraid that things would get worse if he said something wrong. Aren't you the man who paid my woman $10 million to have a drink with you and another $1 million to kneel in front of you? Where did that arrogance go? Let's see it. Forrest was even more enthusiastic after Hans' lack of response. Hans's lungs were about to burst in anger. It was as if a dog was bullying a tiger. If he were injured, he could have killed Forrest with a single slap, but he had no choice but to endure it now. Forrest wanted to live calmer, but he also wanted to redeem the dignity he lost on the cruise ship. Do you think staying silent would help? Fuck off. Hans had reached his limit, so he roared uncontrollably. Fuck you. Boom. Forrest's anger burst into flames, and he kicked Hans. Hans was so scared that he used all his strength to fight back, but it still hurt a lot. Do you have a death wish? I'll make your life a living hell before I die. Forrest was furious that he missed the kick, so he lifted his foot and started kicking crazily. Hans was dumbstruck. He quickly turned to the frightened marshal and said, Call the police. Call the police. Ow. After being distracted for a moment, he got kicked again, so he screamed in pain. Marshall was scared of dying too, but Forrest was going to get his revenge on Hans. He took his phone out, but he felt Kiran's cold gaze on him, so trembling, he put it away. Call the people who attended the cruise party that night and tell them the enemy has been found. Let them get their revenge, said Kiran. Frightened, Marshall gulped twice and nodded. He started calling the attendees instead of calling the police. Kiran called Henry and asked him to bring everyone from the three families there. Hans, lying on the ground, heard Marshall talking on the phone but could not hear what he was saying. He was hopeful as he thought he was calling the police, so he shouted angrily at Forrest, Stop, or else you're doomed once the police get here. Before that, I'll destroy you, Forrest growled. Hans was on the ground, rolling back and forth. He tried to avoid his kicks, but his efforts were in vain, and he was kicked repeatedly. Hans was in despair. He looked desperately at Snow and said, We were college classmates. Can't you help me plead for mercy? Snow's face turned red. She was about to say something to Kiran, but Kiran said, The son of the Marsh family is the one kicking you. It has nothing to do with us. The corner of Hans's lips twitched. He was not stupid. He knew that Kiran asked him to do this. Plus, you stole his woman and threw her into the sea to feed the sharks. Have you ever considered his feelings? Kiran's words added fuel to the fire. Forrest was even more furious. When Snow heard what Hans did, she bit her tongue. Why would she care about an animal like him? Hans felt like meat on a chopping board. He was completely hopeless, waiting to be chopped up. The people who received the call started arriving while Hans was screaming like a slaughtered pig. Theodore arrived just in time. When he saw what was happening, he was petrified. Chapter 320. After Forrest had completed his task, he felt as if he had been granted an amnesty. He was relieved and quickly looked at Kiran. Kiran was looking at Theodore and gave him a thumbs up. Theodore, your grandson is awesome. He kicked the balls of the son of Power Hub Investment Group. Power Hub Investment Group. Theodore staggered. He felt like his head was exploding. Kiran pointed at Hans, unconscious on the ground, and said, "He's the son of Power Hub Investment Group CEO. The muscles on Theodore's face kept shaking. He looked at Forrest and shouted angrily, "You bastard, you! Are you scared of Power Hub Investment Group?" Kiran asked Theodore contemptuously. Theodore's face turned pale when he was asked that. He was at a loss for words. Although he was afraid of them, he was even more afraid of Kiran. If you're afraid, then admit it. If you're not, then... Kiran dragged the last word. Theodore was tense all over. He looked at Kiran warily and asked, "Then what? Have the Quinn family and the Ziegler family break Hans' limbs?" Kiran said cold-bloodedly. What? Henry and Warner exclaimed. Kiran pretended not to hear them. He looked at Forrest and said, "If the Quinn family and the Ziegler family refuse, you'd have to do it yourself." Forrest was in a dilemma. He dared not say no to Kiran, so he nodded. Theodore's head was buzzing. Kiran was too cruel. If he did not get the Quinn family and the Ziegler family involved, Power Hub Investment Group's revenge would weaken him. He quickly looked at Henry and Warner, saying, "You two break his legs. We'll break his arms." Henry's expression sank. Warner had been pampered his whole life, so he was very afraid. "Theodore, are you afraid of attacking Power Hub Investment Group?" Kiran sneered. Warner could sense Kiran's anger. He was afraid that Kiran would kill him first, so his whole body trembled as he shook his head. "And no, I'm not afraid." "Do it!" Theodore shouted to his bodyguards without hesitation. The bodyguards walked up to Hans and lifted their feet. In the next second, there were crisp sounds of bones breaking. Hans, who was unconscious, woke up from the pain. His vision was blurry, and he tried to move his arms, but he felt a heart-piercing pain. He could no longer control his arms. "Yeah, you all!" Hans shouted furiously. "Good job, Theodore." Kiran gave him a thumbs up and smiled. Theodore did not care about Kiran at all. He looked at Henry and said, "Is the Quinn family not going to do it?" Henry was embarrassed, but he had no way out. He looked at the bodyguard beside him and said, "Break his right leg." The bodyguard walked over and glared at Hans coldly. Hans was completely frightened now. "No! Don't. I'm the son of Power Hub Investment." Crack. The crisp sound of bones cracking interrupted his yelling. Hans kicked his legs in pain. He could not breathe, and he passed out again. The scene fell into a deathly silence. Everyone saw how brutal Kiran was, so they dared not move. "What about the left leg?" Kiran looked at Warner. The muscles on Warner's face twitched. Being put in a difficult position like that. He knew about Wolfgate's destruction. Kiran could kill him however and whenever he wanted. He was nothing but a joke to Kiran. If he said no, he would be doomed. If he said yes, he would be in danger too. Even if Power Hub Investment Group did not know he was involved, Theodore could rat them out. "Warner, are you not going to do it?" Theodore was determined to drag Warner down with him. Warner shook off his worries and looked at the bodyguard beside him. "Break his left leg." Immediately, the bodyguard walked up to Hans. Without a word, he kicked his left leg. The sound of bones cracking sounded. Hans screamed like a pig being slaughtered after he regained consciousness. He looked at his left leg and saw his broken ankle. All his limbs were broken. He was lying on the ground, crippled. He was desperate and in pain.